Ferrari had another frustrating and mind-boggling weekend at Silverstone, collecting points only thanks to Hamilton, and even that had its own twist. Charles Leclerc and Lewis's disappointment was plain for all to see, with rage resonating over the radio during the race. Some Ferrari pit wall decisions weren't merely questionable, they were on the brink of being incomprehensible. So now the drivers have ranted in outrage once more. The question on everyone's lips is, will the Maranello-based team finally do something? Or is it already time to shift all the spotlight to 2026 and start afresh from scratch? Because again, Ferrari demonstrated why a complete internal overhaul is way overdue, particularly with their strategy team. Even before the lights extinguished, Charles Leclerc made a brave and risky gamble, and it was his call that the track was dry enough for him to start on slicks. It proved to be a gamble that failed. It took only one lap before the Monegasque discovered the track remained too wet and threw in the towel. Around the same time, Lando Norris was informed that George Russell, starting from P4, had made the same slippery tire bluff and was massively out of rhythm. Before long, a safety car rolled out, providing Leclerc with a chance to abort his disastrous strategy and switch to intermediates. But the damage had been done. That initial gamble had paid out poorly, and Leclerc was struggling to recover lost positions when the heavens again opened. And if Ferrari's pit wall wasn't under enough pressure, Leclerc's race radio conversation spelled it out as day what exactly had gone awry. In one of the most insightful moments, Charles told his engineer, "The rear is hotter than the front. We need to work on this. Maybe we can talk at the end of the race. I am receiving conflicting signals, and the brake balance keeps flip-flopping. I have no idea where the brakes are currently." With the race in its final 10 laps, Leclerc's last chance to gain points hung on turning back from intermediates to slicks. Alonso moved first, and so did Ferrari. Then there came another moment of confusion. The team queried Charles about whether he would like to run with used mediums or hards. His response clearly went in favor of the yellow-striped mediums. Ferrari strangely installed a set of softs instead. Another communication failure. It wasn't unexpected. It didn't work. Leclerc had trouble keeping the car on track, having clearly lost his fight. At turn 15, he lost his cool, going very close to Carlos Sainz and taking off the front wing of his former teammate. He finally crawled home in P14. His radio tirade afterwards? Sheer rage. "Yeah, that was effing awful. Sorry, I'm speechless. There is plenty to do. I'm not even certain where I parked the car on the track. It was tough." And let's not forget, Leclerc was already fuming after qualifying when he was P6, but he had pace sufficient to put him on the front row. But this time, he did not blame the team completely. He admitted that there is some soul-searching to be done, especially when looking at his own race in comparison to Hamilton's. Because even despite his own problems, the seven-time world champion was still struggling near the front, although he got caught behind Gasly and finished behind Hülkenberg. Retrospectively considering all this, Leclerc said, "Slick tires initially. The first two sectors were dry, and I thought it would dry quickly. It was a mistake, but the main problem was pace. Lewis had better pace. My setup is on the limit, and it works only in the dry. The only silver lining is Lewis's performance. At least I will know where I went wrong and see him." But here's the thing. This is not the first time Leclerc has been let down by Ferrari, and unless drastic circumstances alter, it won't be the last. That's why he's calling for explanations now. In a subsequent, more candid moment, he continued, "One of the reasons for such a poor race was that we believed the track would accelerate soon, but the biggest issue was the speed. I want answers before going home. I'll work hard to try and understand what happened." Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, things weren't looking much better for Hamilton either. The seven-time world champion had a lot of trouble understanding the first call from Ferrari to pit him at the exact time they did, which ended up costing him 4 positions on the grid. Running in P4, Hamilton exited the first pit stop at P8, and as Ver explained, the primary cause for that was Hamilton's car GPS going missing. Of course, Hamilton was really annoyed with this, especially considering the fact he wasn't at ease with the car at all. Explaining this to his racing engineer on the way the car performed under the changing conditions, Hamilton complained, "The car is so hard to drive, mate. It's snappy like crazy." And it was that very first call during the pit stop that proved costly for Hamilton, putting an end to his streak of podium finishes in Silverstone in all his races after 2014. The Brit also wasn't happy with the calls from his team. And when addressing these controversial moves by the strategist, Hamilton didn't mince words as he said, "Not all the calls were good ones. I think the first one wasn't a good call clearly, because we got undercut by a bunch of people. So I'm not really sure what exactly happened there. We'll have to go back and see what happened, but I was P4 and I came out P8, so that's not good. And then I chose to come in close to the right time, but it was super tricky when I got back out and lost a ton of time. I went off at turns 3, 9, 11, etc. This is something that needs to be addressed as well. Before the change from the intermediates to slicks, Hamilton was around 2 to 3 seconds behind Hülkenberg, but after he changed tires and then Hülkenberg did the same a lap later, the German driver was 10 seconds ahead of Hamilton. Just goes to show that the strategy wasn't good yet again, further prompting questions as to whether or not Ferrari is doing a good job behind closed curtains. I don't think the drivers will be happy to continue with this team in 2025, let alone start the new regulations in 2026, which is why some serious talks need to be held between Ver and his crew. There's no doubt that Charles felt extremely uncomfortable with the SF25 because of the massive lack of pace, and he went on to admit later on that he needs to study Lewis's performance. Yes, that's not something that Ferrari should be extremely happy about, because at the end of the day, they finished behind a Saab on pure pace, something that's happening for the second time for Hamilton in 2025 after Spain. But what this goes to show is that the Maranello-based squad still has a massive ground to cover in order to compete up front, something that might not even be possible anymore for the remainder of the season. An even more depressing fact is that Leclerc doesn't think the problems of the car can be solved. Prior to the beginning of the race, he was adamant that he and his team know exactly what's wrong with the car, and it's something that needs to be worked on in the future. But after Silverstone, the depressing behavior of Leclerc came alive yet again, as he admitted that they're stuck with this issue for a longer period of time. Still, this is something that Verrier dismissed, and when addressing this issue that was called by Leclerc, the Frenchman said Leclerc also said he won't disclose the issue. "I have to stick to the team order. I won't disclose it. It can be fixed, but it's true that we're struggling with something." So, what's next for Ferrari? The team is now struggling with accepting the feedback of the drivers and implementing it properly on the driver, and it's an urgent matter that needs to be solved as soon as possible. Lewis Hamilton didn't have kind words for his team after the struggles that eventually stripped him away from a podium finish. And when addressing this, he said, "I just struggled to keep up." The tires had lost traction massively, and the car was incredibly hard to drive. "I think towards the end, I learned loads today. Loads from the day. It's only the second time I've ever driven in the wet in this car. It's not one that likes these kind of conditions. Having lots of data to work on this for me, I'm going to sit down with the people who designed the automobile next year, because there are things about this automobile that cannot make it into next year." The drivers will definitely have lots to tell Verse and the engineers at Maranello, because clearly they're not receiving what they're requesting. Apart from the communication errors and the poor strategy, they are left with a useless car that just does not do what you want it to do. If your drivers like Leclerc and Hamilton are being compelled to deal with such an adversary, you could well understand that they'll be unleashing hell on your heads in order to solve this issue at the earliest opportunity. With all of this in mind, what do you make of Hamilton's and Leclerc's radio communications regarding the car's reaction? And more specifically, do you think Ferrari has an adequate fix for it in 2025? Let us know in the comments below. And after that, don't forget to hit that video that's right now showing up on your screen.